Diddy trial replay. Former aide George Kaplan says Combs threatened his job. A federal agent, a psychologist, a former top aide. A handful of witnesses took the stand in Sean Diddy Combs' sweeping federal sex crimes trial on May 21st. Gerard Gannon, a Homeland Security special agent, was up first, describing the massive raid on Combs' Miami mansion last year, where agents found illegal drugs, weapons, and more. Psychologist Dawn Hughes took the stand next, explaining the complexities of physical, sexual, and psychological abuse, factors at the center of the allegations against Combs. George Kaplan, a former executive assistant for Combs, also told jurors the rapper repeatedly threatened his job. Scott Mescudi, better known as Rapper Kid, Cudi, will also take the stand in the coming days. Diddy allegedly threatened the musician after he and Combs' former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura Fine, dated briefly over a decade ago. Combs' alleged abuse of Ventura Fine has played a major role in the embattled hip-hop mogul's trial. Regina Ventura, Cassie's mother, told the court on May 20th she was physically sick over the rapper's actions, and she was once pressured to send him $20,000 after he raged at her daughter. Combs, 55, was arrested in September 2024 and charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution. He has pleaded not guilty. Who is George Kaplan? Diddy's former executive assistant shares what it was like working for the music mogul. George Kaplan once served as an executive assistant for Combs Enterprises, the umbrella company behind Sean Diddy Combs' many ventures. On May 21st, Kaplan took the witness stand to share details of his time in the high-pressure world behind one of hip-hop's biggest names. Kaplan, 34, explained that his job involved a wide range of responsibilities, from carrying Diddy's movar bags to ensuring all essentials were packed: clothes, medicine, electronics, and sometimes food. He worked for Combs between 2014 and 2015. As his role evolved, Kaplan found himself spending more late nights in recording studios and preparing hotel rooms while Diddy worked on a mixtape. He said he often worked grueling hours, up to 80 to 100 hours a week, and his first-year salary was $125,000. Over time, he became a trusted member of the inner circle, meeting several of Diddy's key team members, including Christina KK Coram, the rapper's former chief of staff. In court, Kaplan described Coram as someone who essentially ran Mr. Combs' life. Kaplan says Diddy threatened his job regularly. Kaplan also testified that Diddy would occasionally threaten to fire him, saying this happened about once a month. He described the tone of these moments as sometimes intense, sometimes framed as a form of motivation. In one instance, Kaplan recalled being asked to bring a gallon-sized water bottle when he couldn't find one and instead brought 2 half-gallon bottles. Combs was visibly displeased, confronting him about the mistake. He wanted everything around him to reflect the highest standards, Kaplan said. Psychologist testifies on the dynamics of abusive relationships. On May 23rd, psychologist Dawn Hughes took the stand in a high-profile sex crimes trial called by the prosecution to explain the deep and lasting effects of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Hughes told jurors it's very common for victims to remain in abusive relationships, shedding light on the complex psychology behind such decisions. She explained that leaving an abusive situation often requires concrete resources, such as money, housing, or support networks, which many victims simply don't have. Hughes also discussed the tactic known as love bombing, where an abuser overwhelms their partner with affection or gifts to win them back after conflict or abuse. These relationships often begin with love, Hughes said, describing the honeymoon phase that can follow incidents of abuse. During this time, the abuser may act especially caring, making it harder for the victim to walk away. Some victims even come to believe that their abuser is the only person who truly understands what they've endured. Hughes also introduced the concept of trauma bonds, emotional connections formed between victims and their abusers. She explained how victims may find themselves clinging to the occasional kindness in the relationship, despite ongoing harm. When asked why someone might return to an abusive partner, Hughes said they go back for the companionship, for the version of the partner they still love. How trauma affects memory and disclosure. Hughes outlined common coping mechanisms used by survivors, including both mental and emotional strategies for self-protection. She noted that victims are more likely to report being harmed by a stranger than by someone they know, and often choose to confide in a mother, sister, or close friend first. She also described how trauma can impact memory. Victims may vividly remember small sensory details, like the smell of alcohol or the sight of a cracked ceiling, even if their broader recollection of the event feels disjointed. After prolonged abuse, Hughes said, the events can start to blur together because the violence becomes routine. The role of substances in coping with abuse. Substance use, Hughes said, is a common way for survivors to cope with the psychological pain. Alcohol or drugs can be used to dull anxiety and fear in the midst of trauma. Substances help people numb the pain, she told the court. Hughes added that many victims don't come forward immediately. In fact, some wait months or even years. This hesitation, she explained, often stems from a fear of not being believed or worries about losing personal relationships or financial stability, especially if the abuser is someone with significant influence or wealth. Psychologist paid $6K a day discusses psychological abuse in Diddy trial. Dawn Hughes, a clinical psychologist, returned to the witness stand on May 21st, earning $6,000 per day for her testimony. She explained that she is serving as a blind expert in the trial. meaning she hasn't interviewed Sean Diddy Combs or any witnesses directly involved. Instead, she's providing general insights based on her expertise in abuse dynamics. Outside of court, Hughes charges $600 per hour for her services. Defense pushes back on scope of expert testimony. During cross-examination, Combs' legal team emphasized that Hughes wasn't offering an opinion on the specifics of the case or its witnesses. Instead, they framed her testimony as general and educational, not directed at Combs personally. The defense also noted that Hughes has testified in multiple cases over the years for various prosecutors, despite none involving the same individuals or evidence. They attempted to introduce a document from a training session Hughes led for abuse survivors, which covered courtroom behavior and presentation. The defense argued it suggested Hughes had turned expert testimony into a lucrative side business. However, the judge declined to admit the document, stating it was irrelevant. Hughes' previous testimony in the Depp v. Heard case, this isn't the first high-profile case involving Hughes. In 2022, she testified in the defamation trial between actors Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. There, she assessed Heard over nearly 30 hours and diagnosed her with PTSD, which Hughes linked to reported intimate partner violence. What federal agents found: during Diddy's mansion raid in another major development, jurors were shown images from the March 2024 federal raid on Combs' Miami Beach mansion. Investigators uncovered several notable items: 3 cell phones hidden in designer boots, a black Gucci bag reportedly containing drugs such as Xanax, cocaine, ketamine, and MDMA, and a wooden box labeled Puffy, one of Combs' nicknames, which agents said contained MDMA and psilocybin, a hallucinogen. In the guest house's security room, law enforcement also found a loaded .45 caliber handgun inside a red suitcase. One hallway closet contained a large quantity of personal lubricants, including 25 bottles of baby oil and 31 bottles of Astroglide. Prosecutors allege these items were linked to private gatherings that are now part of the charges against Combs. Why is Diddy on trial? Combs is facing federal sex crimes and trafficking charges in a sprawling lawsuit that has eroded his status as a power player and kingmaker in the entertainment industry. He was arrested in September 2024 and has been charged with racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. He has pleaded not guilty to all 5 counts. What is racketeering? Racketeering is the participation in an illegal scheme under the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organization Statute, or RICO, as a way for the U.S. government to prosecute organizations that contribute to criminal activity. Using RICO law, which is typically aimed at targeting multi-person criminal organizations, prosecutors allege that Combs coerced victims, some of whom they say were sex workers, through intimidation and narcotics to participate in freak-offs, sometimes days-long sex performances that federal prosecutors claim they have video of are